Hey there, I'm Teddy, ACON's Manager of Trans and Gender Diverse Health Equity, and I'd also like to acknowledge that wherever we are, wherever you're watching this forum, we are in Aboriginal land, and I'd like to pay respects to all elders past, present and emerging, any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders who are watching this, who are participating in this, and a particular shout out to our sister girls and brother boys who are truly the future.
I'm AJ, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm president of Trans Pride Australia.
And we are so delighted to welcome you to our last panel of the forum. You'll see me shortly. It's called Gender Euphoria, a new narrative.
Today's part of our Trans Pride during a pandemic. It's a 4-part online forum series for trans and gender diverse people and our allies, with support from the City of Sydney. With COVID, this has changed the playing field for many, and we have discovered on our TPA digital hangouts the vital importance of people keeping together. We are family, we are friends, and some have become lovers.
My very small team at ACON and I recently pulled off something huge. We built Trans Hub, and it's for all trans people in New South Wales, our loved ones, allies, and health providers. And while Trans Hub has lots of the answers to our community's questions, nothing beats a conversation to learn more.
This year hasn't been an easy time for anyone, but with COVID-19, it's been hurting those communities that have already been hurt. We know that many trans and gender diverse people have been having an especially tough time.
So this series was created to help fight back, to provide you with tools and connections to get through, and to flourish as we come out of this pandemic.
For more information and resources, either join one of the Trans Pride Australia community groups. We've got 4 closed groups, one for trans and gender diverse people, one for the allies and friends, a partners group, and a parents and carers group. Or just keep watching today. Don't forget to check out Trans Hub. It's simple to navigate, and there's a link in the chat right now for you to be able to visit. How easy can that be?
So with those formalities out of the way, let's pass the mic to Liz Duck-Chong, who will be moderating today's panel. Thank you so much for joining us,
and for being with us
have a really beautiful night.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our 3rd panel in the Trans Pride in a Pandemic series, Gender Euphoria, a new narrative. I'm so excited to be sharing this Zoom screen with just a crew of absolute heroes and icons. And I'm going to introduce everybody, and then we're going to get into asking some questions. Just a few little notes before we do. If you have any questions during this session, there is a question function down the bottom, so you can have a chat in the chat or ask us some questions. And if we can get to those, we're going to try to. But if we can't, we'll make sure we find another way of addressing those, maybe on the Instagram or something like that. And please get into the chat, have a conversation. If you set the chat to all panelists and attendees, it means everyone can read your messages and everyone can read all the wonderful things that everyone has to say, which I'm thrilled about. But let's get into this session. I'm so excited to introduce I'm in love with everybody here. First up, we have Victoria Anthony, who is a DJ and entertainer from Sydney's fabulous Oxford Street. A proud transgender woman, she has run transgender cabaret Trans Glamour, also working with Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras at several parties and events over the years. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you so much for having me, and hi everyone watching. Hope you're all well.
Next up, we have Mama Alto, who is a jazz singer, cabaret artiste, and gender transcendent diva, which I can absolutely confirm. She is a transgender and queer person of colour who works with the radical potential of storytelling, strength and softness, and power and vulnerability. Fierce, femme, and fabulous, she has performed at beloved venues around the country and has been awarded many accolades, not least the 2019 Australian LGBTI Awards Music Artist of the Year. Welcome, Mama.
Hello, thank you. Hello, everybody. And I'm zooming in from Boonwurrung land on Kulin Nations country.
Thank you so much for that. Next up, we have Nix, who is an actor, speaker, and writer based out of Melbourne with an ongoing interest in giving back what they can to trans and gender diverse community, particularly in helping to guide new actors and artists. Their speaking experience includes featuring in My Trans Story, The Next Generation, and being a member of the panel How to Be a Good Trans Ally. Their acting credits include STC's Lord of the Flies, and they're currently engaged in the role of Scorpius Malfoy in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Welcome so much.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. Very, very happy to be here.
Next up, we have Estelle Clark, who is a trans Yorta Yorta woman from Noongar Country in Perth. In 2014, Estelle was awarded Western Australian Young Person of the Year for her passion towards First Nations, queer and trans issues. Estelle was also a National Young People's Human Rights Medalist finalist in the same year and a 2015 Pinnacle Scholar. Thank you so much for being here, Estelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so delighted to be able to share space with you.
Next up, we have Emma Bastable, who is a 28-year-old Gamilaroi woman and solicitor at the Public Interest Advocacy Centre, currently working within the areas of homelessness, police accountability, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice. In her spare time, she's an avid netballer, recently working with Netball Australia for the launch of their trans inclusion guidelines. I know, right? She's concerned with colonial structures of gender and binaries and hopes to assist in the important work of creating space for First Nations, queer and trans identities which have existed for millennia. Welcome, Emma. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm on Gadigal land as well.
And last but not least, we have Teddy Cook, who is ACON's manager of the Trans Gender Diverse Health Equity Department, adjunct lecturer at the Kirby Institute and UNSW, and vice president of the Australian Professional Association for Transgender Health, or AUSPAC. He works across a diverse range of policy, education, health promotion, research, and advocacy projects, including helping create this one aimed at improving health and rights for trans people of all genders. Welcome, Teddy.
Hello, everybody. It's so good to be here, zooming in on Gadigal country.
It's so good to have all of you here. I'm so thrilled to be running this session about gender euphoria. I feel like we had a little chat the other week, just the panelists kind of talking about how we wanted this session to go, and this idea of gender euphoria as kind of blossoming in the past, I guess, couple of years as replacing, well, not even replacing, but just becoming more known and more noticed, more understood than some of the more depressing or some of the more single note narratives about trans lives. But having you all here in this wonderful space, I guess I want to start by asking about the value of that itself and throw it out to everybody. Has anyone really felt like they've been the only trans person at an event or the token trans person in a situation before? Is that a pretty common experience?
Absolutely.
Maybe once or twice.
And so in having spaces like this where we actually all are together and all are able to speak, what are we trying to actually achieve? For the audience at home, what is it that having so many people in a room or in a Zoom conversation actually helps to achieve? Teddy, I would like to throw to you first.
It's really important that we have these kinds of conversations together, and that it's trans people who have a lived expertise about who we are and how we move through the world. We live in a world that sees trans people as a problem or a challenge to fix, when actually, I just think we're the solution. And I think that's what we're moving towards. So the more opportunities there are for our communities to gather, meet and be seen as we've always been seen, I think our community will continue to move towards liberation.
I love that. Estelle and Victoria, I see you both nodding. I'd love to also hear your thoughts on this.
Estelle can go first.
I was just about to say, Victoria, go first. Yeah, I think the focus of elevating voices and having discussions like this is really important, because the only people who can really know what we need are us, and we're the ones feeling the effects of what a lack of care, a lack of social equity, a lack of visual representation, we feel that more than anyone. And so I think it's really powerful to have trans people at the front of this particular conversation, navigating that. And I think the facet of having joy and euphoria involved, I think every person who's watching this Zoom from home today is so lucky to be able to share in this moment with like all of these like wonderful people, especially like I've shared joy with Victoria, I've shared joy with Emma, I've shared so much joy with Teddy as well. Like the people that you're about to hear from is really wonderful, and I think it's really monumental and like powerful that we're in this moment right now.
Absolutely.
I think as well that you know, it's really good that we have trans visibility. It's really important because a lot of people are struggling to come out and be proud of their transness. And I think it's really important that we're creating a space today to have people to listen and see a variety of trans people in one space. So that's really important because I've even myself in I've had people come up to me out in the clubs because I work out in the around Oxford Street, and a lot of people have come out to me and said, "Oh, like you made me realize what I wanted to be," or like it was just great to see me out and you know, owning my transness and proud of who I am. So I think it really reflects positively on other people who want to transition or affirm their gender.
Absolutely. Mama, I want to throw to you because not only are you a well accoladed performer, but you've also put on the show Gender Euphoria itself, which celebrates exactly this idea of having trans people of so many identities and backgrounds and stories coming together. And so I guess I want to ask what your perspective is on having what it is like when you do have multiple trans people and what joy that brings.
I think really at the heart of it is when you're a minoritized or a marginalized person, and I like to say minoritized with a D at the end, not minorities, because often we're not the minority. We're discriminated against, we're invisibilized, we're marginalized. So we're minoritized, not minorities. When you're a minoritized or from a minoritized group of people or identity, society has often been constructed in ways, mainstream media and culture has often been constructed in ways that invisibilize or erase or silence us. And there's that expression, power in numbers. The moment that you realize that you're not the only trans or gender diverse person in the world, that there are other people like you, that's a very affirming experience. And then the more you encounter and find community and family, patchwork family of a kind with other trans and gender diverse people, that continues to affirm you, and it refutes the popularly held or mainstream notion or heteronormative or cisnormative, or as I like to say, bigoted notion that we don't exist, that we shouldn't exist, that we're an anomaly, that we haven't existed historically, which the historical record shows for thousands and thousands of years that we do. So that small step of seeing other trans people, of having community with other trans people, of having positive role models who are trans, that's a powerful thing because of that affirming. It is harm reduction in action. It is suicide reduction in action. It allows people to see a world. There's that another old expression, if you can't see it, how can you be it? It's not to say that there aren't struggles involved with being trans. It's not to erase the very real hardships that society often puts upon us, the discrimination and the violence, but it is saying that those dysphoric and traumatic experiences are not the totality of our lives, that there's actually a rich, powerful, beautiful, positive, empowering, joyous, full of love side of our lives. And that is the biggest thing about gender euphoria as a concept and about this kind of trans tipping point in the culture, is that it says to trans youth and it says to older trans people, even in their 80s and 90s who have never been able to come out before, it says if you embrace your identity, if you discover your transness, that there is more than a life of misery waiting for you, which was the previous social narrative.
Completely. I love that concept of if you can't see it, you can't be it, I think. And especially as it applies to finding euphoria in the trans experience. I think that I've experienced so many stories for so long, told often by cis people, of trans pain and of trans misery. But to actually see trans people being authors of their own stories about euphoria and joy and all of those beautiful emotions, I think, allows us to forge a path in the world. This also goes to something that we were talking about during our little chat the other week, Emma, about what this value of seeing people around who maybe have just kind of been there a little bit longer than you or done a few things you haven't, and kind of how empowering and powerful that is.
Yeah, I think like the trans community is kind of where we learn to take up space, where we learn to be comfortable in our skin, not just to exist, but to thrive. I wanted to give a shout out to some particular trans spaces like Cult Sundays, where I first made connections with trans elders and peers, where I realized like events could be so much more than just a place to be a community. Events like Mother Ball and the work that Benji Ra has been doing in the Vogue scene were just like utterly mind-blowing to me at the time. Just to see Black and brown bodies, not just on stage, front and center, but actually running the entire event. It just like totally reset my opinion on what was possible at events. Like I realized that the feeling of community, of constantly feeling like uncomfortable in queer spaces, like I didn't fit in or I wasn't wanted, wasn't something that is inevitable. It's a result where people don't consider our existence or don't value us. So yeah, I just think the importance of those spaces where we are celebrated is just so vital.
Completely. And I feel like whenever I ask people or talk to people about euphoria, there's the internal sense, there's the euphoria with the self and the affirmation, but community is the other side of that, and it plays such a large role in being able to find any sense of euphoria with ourselves. Nix, I want to talk with you about the role you've been playing in terms of helping other people find that euphoria and that kind of that presence in your work and in your world. Like, what's that been like working with and supporting other trans and gender diverse people?
I think because from an acting perspective first, I've basically played exclusively young men under the age of 18 for the past years, and I at times I have issues with that, but the thing that comes around as the biggest benefit to me is that when I'm on a made stage production and there's a young trans person in the audience and they see a trans actor up on stage, that's the kind of representation I certainly didn't get when I was that age. And I've had teenagers like corner me at like shopping centers to talk to me about how much it meant to them. And Lord of the Flies was like a really better example because I basically was running around stage in an exposed binder for about half of that show. So there were just tons and tons of young trans people that really connected with that that moment from there. And that was a moment that I advocated for from within the show. So wherever I can, I try to make my transness as visible as possible, which is sometimes easier said than done. But from within whatever constraint I'm working in, I try to make sure it's known that I'm a trans actor and that is who I am and that you can't divorce that from who I am. And I find that in itself is really important, especially for people that are young fans of that work. I would have figured out if I saw a trans actor play a trans character when I was 13, I probably would have figured it out a lot sooner than I did. But other than that, it's mostly been like a lot of mentoring, that if a young trans or queer person has expressed an interest in the arts or in acting in particular, it's so like I guess I sound like a grizzled war vet or something. Like, all right, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to do. And I guess very much doing my best to empower someone, like take care of that and cultivate that light that is in them. And so like, I guarantee you, if you work at this hard enough, you'll get to the point, like you'll find your tribe. I was the only trans person in drama school, and that was a nightmare. And it prepared me for an industry that is not indicative of how it actually works, is that you will gravitate towards people that care for you and care for your work and care for who you are, and vice versa. You will find people that will welcome and nurture who you are rather than try to cram you into a box that you don't quite fit.
Completely. And I think you're absolutely right. It goes back to the point that Emma made before about kind of finding those trans spaces. But before we move on to the next question, I kind of want to throw it out to everybody of where have you found those trans affirming or those trans majority spaces? If there's somebody watching this at home or wherever they are who just hasn't quite figured out where that is for them yet, where are some places that they can actually go and find some of that community themselves? Anyone wants to jump in, otherwise I'll pick someone.
We're too
I might
polite.
quickly jump in and
Yes, absolutely.
I think one of the big lessons that a lot of people who are pursuing that sense of community or that sense of gender euphoria are finding, or certainly have found in the last 5 to 10 years, is that unfortunately often it is up to us to create those spaces. We have seen, of course, there's the LGBTQIA plus alphabet soup, rainbow family, umbrella of diverse sexualities and genders. But I think for young trans people, or for older trans people who are just coming out or just beginning to move in communities, there's often, unfortunately, that pitfall where you will gravitate to a queer space or a gay and lesbian space and find that actually there is not much trans representation or understanding of transness. That's not necessarily because they're bad people or bad spaces, but there is just not that same level of establishment that we have, 30, 40 years now of these gay spaces particularly. And that's wonderful for the people that those spaces cater to. But for a lot of trans people, I think, and the amazing work that Victoria has done in creating spaces particularly speaks to this. Sometimes you have to go out and find other like-minded trans people to create those communities and spaces. Trans Pride Australia, of course, is again another wonderful example of that. And there are all kinds of groups like that. So it is really about finding your people. And sometimes that includes the whole rainbow, the whole queer family, but sometimes it's about being comfortable and not having to explain yourself in a space of other trans people. I hope no one in the audience misunderstands me, because I'm certainly not advocating for segregation or anything like that. But in terms of when you just want to let your hair down and experience that pure euphoria without having to explain or compromise your identity, creating trans spaces is invaluable, and the internet has played a wonderful role in that as well.
Completely.
I think as a person with a generally smaller friendship circle, what has been most helpful for me every time is making sure that I'm living with other trans people. That's been my main, that's been what I've done mostly to keep myself like healthy and well as I go forward. And not exclusively with trans people necessarily, but I find that typically it kind of ends up that way. Anyway, like you pick one and then you go, well, might as well complete the set. And that's been for someone like me, again, that doesn't have a lot of like large circles of friends or goes to tons of parties or anything. That's been a very good way for me to like be very well taken care of at home and like not feel I have to justify my presence in my own house. So
Completely.
There's something that's really powerful about the ways that our communities meet and how we engage. We talk about gender dysphoria, and we also talk about the very high rates of poorer mental health, suicidality, and self-harm in our communities. And research tells us something really important about that the antidote to trans people whether that be dysphoric trans people or unhappy, harming trans people, the solution is actually just three things: community connection, access to gender-affirming healthcare, and, well, this one's a little tougher, being able to move through the world as who you are without being discriminated against. If the last one isn't possible, then the first two, certainly the first one around community connection and connectedness in whatever way works for you, whether that's on Facebook, Instagram, at a bar, at a play, at your home, wherever it is. When we come out, I know this was my experience, I was really the first trans person that I ever met. And I had no access to information. I had no idea what was going on for me. I was a Western suburbs weirdo, doing my best, looking at you, Vicky. I know you're a Westie too. And really just moving through this world so lost, not being and not feeling affirmed, not being allowed to be who I am. And you know what that produced? Gender dysphoria.
Absolutely. Estelle, how about you? What has been some of the ways that you've found this community or found these ways of finding euphoria?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how many people here follow Benji Ra, but to top back onto what Emma was saying about the community that Benji has created, Benji recently posted something online that really struck me, and it was talking about like cells and how cells can either only protect themselves or grow. They can't do both of those things at the same time. And I think if you were to maximize that into our scale, like we can't grow and protect ourselves at the same time. And so for us to feel that euphoria, for us to feel that elevation, for us to feel that growth, we need to feel safe, which is why we need to find community. We need to be in spaces where we're not having to constantly critique ourselves and others to enjoy ourselves. I've recently been like rollerblading a lot with like a bunch of queers, and like feeling like I'm not having to worry about whether they see me valid, and just being able to like focus just on what I'm doing, like on my goal, on my focus, and like knowing that I have a community who is queer, but also has like interest, because like you can love being a queer person as much as you want, but I think there's also a really beautiful euphoria when you connect with someone on a level that's more than just your queerness. And that's when that euphoria manifests. That's when you can feel connected to other queer people, not just because you're queer. Like that's where a lot of my euphoria sits, and having that materialized from someone else when I couldn't do that for myself and by myself. Like seeing that in practice enough, like the time I spent with Victoria several years ago when I would go out and I had no trans friends and I knew no one, but I knew Victoria was sitting up in that DJ box and I was just going to bother her until she became my friend. Like I had to find that through others to then realize what I needed for myself. And that's why, yeah, I think it was really important in making sure that we're in spaces where we're not having to try to protect ourselves and grow ourselves at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Emma, I want to throw to you as well. How are you finding these spaces and these people?
Yeah, so I mean, I talked earlier about the importance of physical spaces, which is obviously a thing that is more difficult at the moment. Mama name-checked some great online organizations and groups, but I think another huge part of finding euphoria and community with me was reading trans literature. Particularly the work of people like Julia Serrano, who wrote Whipping Girl, and Kate Bornstein, like just realizing that I was part of like a longer, broader dialogue that had been going on, well before I was born. And yeah, just realizing that we exist in a world of structures that are just, waiting to be torn down and recreated in whatever form, we see fit. So yeah, I just think the importance of realizing you're part of a dialogue, not just physical spaces, is really important to you.
100%. I had a similar experience when I read Alison Bechdel's Dykes to Watch Out For, some of the early comics. And I was just like, oh, wow, like there's all of these queer people and all of these trans people, but they're also having the exact same issues that I am just 20, 30 years ago. There's actually something really comforting about that. I want to throw back to what...
just wanted to
Oh,
jump in.
yes, thank you.
With something else on that point about finding or creating those spaces for euphoria and connection and self-love.
Please do.
Which is, and it's something we talked a lot about when we were creating the work Gender Euphoria, which was our ensemble cabaret extravaganza show of the largest ever entirely trans and gender diverse cast in a main stage Australian production. And something we discussed a lot while we were creating that show was that, and I think it's important to acknowledge as part of tonight's panel discussion, is that a lot of the concepts of gender euphoria that we talk about are interlocked with relative social and economic privileges. And something that we discussed in that group, which was a very diverse group in terms of different privileges, different backgrounds, different economic circumstances, different family environments, different levels of being accepted or embraced or celebrated by the people around them. So there's this idea that there's privilege and we can go and create trans spaces and we can live authentic trans lives and embrace our joy and euphoria. And of course, there's that reality that that is not always possible for everybody, particularly given some of the environments and some of the social structures that a lot of trans people live in. And so that it is also okay and perfectly valid to not be out or to not be out 100% of the time, and to find small spaces and small opportunities for your euphoria that are accessible and safe for you to access, whether that's accessible economically or accessible in terms of easy to do. So we talked a lot in that group about how for some people, their experiences of trans euphoria would simply be, sitting on the front step of their house, drinking a hot cup of tea and thinking to themselves or meditating on the idea of, I'm a woman having a cup of tea, because that allows them to access that space of gendered euphoria, of joy and affirmation in their identity. And it didn't matter that that was a temporary moment that they could hold on to. What matters is that they're able to access and experience that when they can. If they then have to go to work and work at the supermarket and not be out and wear male clothes, even though they identify and are a woman, a trans woman, the fact that they have those moments of euphoria that are accessible, that are easy to do, that don't require the luxuries or privileges of being out 100% of the time or being able to go and access or create club spaces or theatre spaces. So that was something we were really intrigued by, is that when the stereotype of gender euphoria that people will think of is someone living out and proud 24/7, doing everything very trans, having flags everywhere, having everyone in their lives accepting them, or building their life in a way that they can be out in every environment, on the train, at work, with their families, with their friends, whatever. But the reality that we have to acknowledge and encourage is find those euphoric spaces everywhere and anywhere, even if they're only cognitive, even if it's only meditating on and affirming your identity in those moments. For someone who I talked to, it was when she was in the bath. She was able to lie in the bath. She was able to put nice soap, nice smells, which she had been grown up and socialized to think of those as something feminine that she was not allowed to have in her bath when she was a child, because she was being told by society and her family she was male. And so that was a moment for her of being able to access this gender euphoria. She couldn't dress up to go out. She couldn't wear makeup around the people she knew. But when she was in the bath on her own, that was that one, So I think thinking about accessibility to gender euphoria, the relative privileges, the different kinds of euphoria, and creating and encouraging the validity of small, accessible experiences of gender euphoria is very important as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I'm just soaking up everybody's wisdom this evening. I know Teddy's face says it all, just absolute euphoria here from me. I want to throw to you, Teddy, very, very quickly before I get back to talking about and for the trans community, because that is what this forum series is about and is for. And for any cisgender people who are watching this now or watching this later on YouTube, you mentioned before this idea that I'm really interested in about gender dysphoria isn't this innate thing, it's a symptom of society and the way we're treated. I would love you to expand a bit more on that and the ways that cis people can help fight gender dysphoria with their actions.
Thank you for asking me this question, Liz, because I do think a lot about it, and I feel a lot about it as well. The trans experience is so often situated around misery, and that misery comes from within us. And I'm yet to find a trans person who has grown up in a world that we all live in and who wasn't allowed, like Mama said before, wasn't allowed to be who we are, whether that's at 3 or 83. If we aren't freely able to self-determine who we are, have full autonomy and agency about our bodies, our hearts and minds, about any medical intervention that is required for us, not because we're sick, but because lots of people engage in processes that adjust their body. To be perfectly honest, the trans experience is just really normal. We have always been here. We will always be here. And the reality, I believe, is that dysphoria comes from not being freely able to be who we are. I don't think it comes from within us. Well, we know that the trans experience, transness, being trans, being gender diverse, being gender expansive is really normal and a normal part of our world. So if we're growing up and being part of a society that suggests that we're a problem or that we're a challenge to fix, that our transition goes from here to here, and that's it, a narrative that is absolutely set in stone that everybody has to do, medicalized, pathologized, minoritized, thank you, Mama. I love that word, I really appreciate that. Monetized and profited off. Why wouldn't we have such overwhelmingly poor mental health? When we see young people growing up in a family that affirm them, that respect them, that use their name and their pronoun, that allow them to get in the bath with the soap that they want, this is what we find. Happy kids until they go to school. There's something really powerful about trans people, I think, really, really understanding that any pain you feel isn't actually in or from you. It is from the world that we are a part of. And cis people, because most people are cis, have a really important role to play. And it's really easy. Affirm the trans people around you enthusiastically, always. Bake a cake many times. Sit with your discomfort, unlearn everything that you've been told is true and a fact about bodies and about identities. Listen to your people, respect, listen, and that's it. It's really not, I really don't think it's that hard. I know that I'm probably biased, but I've met many, many thousands of trans people in the very privileged role that I have, both at ACON and in OzPath, and many, many clinicians who are providing very good care or wanting to provide very good care for our communities. And what do we see? Happy trans people living lives that we want to, in the worlds that we want to, in the societies and communities that we want to. That doesn't mean that affirming your trans person will fix everything for that trans person. I wouldn't say that, but
it helps.
We need you. We need you. That's absolutely for sure.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely.
And if that doesn't resonate, that's also fine. That's also fine. The magical thing about being trans is that we're all really different. We have different views and different ways of being and different ways to connect with who we are. But if the first thing to think is, if I feel bad, if I don't feel okay, or if there's something wrong with who I am, chances are it's got nothing to do with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I'm aware that we've been talking a lot about these concepts and these kind of broader ideas of gender euphoria and fixing them by finding community groups and by finding others. And I think that's so important. But I want to talk a little bit more about what you were saying earlier, Mama, this idea of kind of finding these moments in yourself where you can and when you can. And it is especially the case because we're talking about finding pride and finding euphoria in a pandemic. And for many people who are not able to leave their houses or leave situations where they're not able to be as out or as comfortable as they want to be, or whatever their circumstance is, finding euphoria can be difficult or might feel impossible at certain points. And so I really want to throw it open to everybody about what are those ways that you find euphoria for yourself and ways that you affirm yourself, and what are some things that people can take away to go and do tonight or tomorrow or over the weekend or over towards the end of the year to look after themselves? Like, I love that idea of having a cup of tea and just having a meditative moment of, this is my cup of tea. I'm a woman having a cup of tea, and that's the only thing that exists right now. But what are some other things that we can suggest for people to be doing?
I think we could do, well, my thing that I've been doing, because I did spend a lot of time at home because I work in bars and clubs, obviously, and I was like spending a lot of time at home. And my things that I did was I listened to disco music, and it could just be your favorite music that you want to hear. I just love disco. It just helps relax me. I could just be laying down. I just start singing. I might start dancing randomly in the living room by myself. I also did a little bit of aerobics. Like, I felt really silly doing it. I put like aerobics Oz style on the TV, and I was just dancing to it by myself, like in the morning for half an hour. I also would watch like some movies and stuff that were trans related, and that was really helpful. And yeah, I just think like, you know, do creative things. I know Carlotta at the moment, she's at home painting like showgirl drawings and stuff, and doing a lot of arty stuff. And I know like a lot of people are still trying to be creative or learning new things. My friend Lada, she's making costumes or something like that when she was at home. And yeah, so I think, yeah, do like your hobbies and do what makes you happy. It's like time to try new things.
Completely. Emma, I want to throw to you. What are some of the things that you're doing to look after yourself at the moment? How are you finding that euphoria?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's anything that involves me being completely in my body, things that connect me to myself and allow me to just exist, I guess, and not be up in my head too much. So like, I'm a huge dancer. I can't wait to get back on the dance floors again when it's safe again, share space with you know, sweaty bodies in dark rooms. But you know, I think as Victoria was saying, you can still have a boogie in your lounge room. That's totally okay. Put on some disco, anything to get
yes.
you. I also play netball, as was mentioned in my intro. I find that's another setting where I'm no longer in that world of the mind, which for me is where dysphoria, I think, is at its strongest. It's just, the netball courts are just one of the few places where I'm just completely, you know, at one with myself and the moment. And I just think it's so important to be able to find those spaces and protect them if you can.
Completely. I've been very lucky. I found a similar space doing amateur adult gymnastics, and I'm going to emphasize the word amateur. I'm really not very good, but it's that idea of just, I spend an hour not in my brain, and suddenly like my body's a bit sore and I'm a bit sweaty, but I've not been thinking about anything negative about myself. I've just been kind of having fun. And I think that's a really amazing thing to find, even if it's just in your own home, following along with a yoga video on YouTube or whatever it is, just have a bit of a boogie, have a bit of a workout. Mama, I want to throw to you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in with something. I mean, a lot of what we discussed so far has to do with the things that we do or things that are physical or spaces where we gather. And even as Emma mentioned, sometimes it's about trying to escape your mind, because your mind often has dysphoria or those thoughts or those memories of what society has put on you. But something that I am very interested in and have been doing a lot of work myself around is the power to create euphoria and affirmation, particularly in terrible circumstances where no other form of expression could be possible, of, in a way, deprogramming one's mind. And I recently read, it's an idea I've had for a long time that I've been interested in, which is embracing the idea that there's no such thing as normal, in inverted commas. Society has been constructed in ways that create certain hierarchies that concentrate power with certain groups of people based on ideas of normal. That's the root of racism and white supremacy. That's the root of sexism. That's the root of homophobia and transphobia. That's the root of class struggle. It's the root of so many things, this idea of us and them, normal and not normal. And that is something so important, is deprogramming your mind and then also doing whatever you can, whatever actions you're able to help spread this into broader society, that there is no normal. That is a false idea of the objective normal body. And when people picture the objective normal body, it's a cisgendered, white, straight, middle-class man who is able-bodied, who behaves in certain ways and interacts with society in certain ways. So once you start to really confront this idea that there's no normal, and actually there's just an enormous diversity of naturally occurring, sometimes random, dynamic, fluid forms and identities, and that is just a biological reality of being an animal species on planet Earth. And that applies to us as humans as well. So once you break down and start to deprogram your mind and embrace this idea that there's no normal, the dysphoric thoughts, when you talk about trans experience, become less loud. They're still there, but they're less loud and they have less control. In the same way, you can use those ideas to think about anti-racism, or to think about internalized ableism, or internalized fat phobia, or anything where you punish yourself, where your mind punishes yourself with these things that seem very inescapable. And this approach of deprogramming what is this idea of normal really starts to wrest control back from those voices that society's pushed into our brains. And a great resource that I recently read that goes even further and more in depth with this is a book by Sonia Renee Taylor called The Body Is Not an Apology. There is a blog project that does little articles here and there, but this book is very, very good at comprehensively guiding you through that process.
Thank you so much. I absolutely would recommend that to anybody who wants to try and find a copy, or if your local library doesn't have a copy, sign up and get them to grab one for you. It's a really great way to get access to books like that. Nix, I want to throw to you. What are some of the ways that you're finding this, this euphoria and finding this internal kind of sense of joy at the moment?
Well, it's a very good question. I'm a very, very cerebral person, so my default is being caught in my own head, and the only way I can get out of it is by using those same thoughts productively, I guess. So repurposing them. So I've been doing a lot of writing over quarantine. So I've been writing several different pieces, and the thing that I found the healthiest for me was just I've just decided that they'll all have trans characters in them, and that's actually been really good for me, good for myself, because it's it's quite remarkably fun to be, you know, writing like a science fiction adventure piece and then be like, and the lead is trans and no one can stop me. And that's quite empowering. It's fun to that's the main way that I've maintained it. I think because I'm too connected with stories to not be related to them in some way. So even now, I must find a way to tell a story. So that's mostly what I've been doing for myself.
Completely, I love that. Estelle, I'm gonna throw to you. What are you doing at the moment? I'm gonna get you to go off mute first.
True. All right. It's been really hard because I like still had my full-time job through COVID. So like while that is also like obviously a blessing because it provides some form of structure and some form of stability, it was I pull a lot of strength from community. I pull a lot of strength from other people. Seeing other people happy innately makes me happy. And so working out how to build happiness by myself and for myself is really hard because like any of my friends can tell you that like the last thing I want to do normally is like be at home and alone, and that's just been more of the reality for me. You know, I have my family that I'm trying to help look after, and so I've not had a lot of time to do the things that I would normally do to build this euphoria. So I think it's nice to be on this panel because I think before this was all organized, a lot of my brain was just like, what's the point? Like where are you finding joy, Estelle? And I've surprisingly recently really found that being in skate parks and skating with my friends, like it sounds a bit rough, but like it's not that rough, but it's just being around groups of like safely around other people who just have passion and drive, and like being around people who I know want to better themselves and want to better their skills and want to build themselves up internally, and also doing that with one of like my favorite trans people in the world, which is her name is Anya, and I now have a really close sister relationship with her, and that's so beautiful because it's like daily, you know what I mean? Like it's like talking all the time, it's constantly affirming each other, and I found a lot of my own euphoria by sharing it with her. And so that's mainly what I've been doing. This is the most time I've like spent outside in like my entire life. So that's nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I am aware that we've only got a few minutes left to go. This time has gone past so quickly. I've been just like sitting in gender euphoria the past hour. So thank you all so much. I want to look to our expansive futures before we go, though. I want to talk about where we go from here. It's the question that I always bring up at the end of every meeting, at the end of everything. But where does gender euphoria go from here? What is the beautiful sci-fi, queer, euphoric future that you imagine? I want to hear all about it. I want everyone who's attending to hear all about it. What do you dream? What's your big dream for the future?
I think linked to those ideas of the big dreams and those kind of ideas about a gender euphoric future is Keith Hampton's question in the chat section, which is about communities supporting trans people in custody or incarcerated trans people, and really not just having our euphoria and sitting in those places of euphoria, but actively making very real changes in the world that prevent those things from happening, whether it's pushing for broader social and legal movements towards rehabilitative and restorative justice, whether it is about decriminalising and focusing on the crimes which marginalised people are more commonly convicted of, things to do with homelessness, things to do with substance use, things to do with sex work, things to do with HIV status, that often find trans people really wrongfully, morally and ethically incarcerated. Pushing for those kind of things and leveraging our privileges and pushing the communities who are allied to us, other members of the queer community, people who support us. You know, if people can come to a show and see someone like me or Victoria or Nix and love us on stage, they need to love our trans kindred who are behind bars. They need to love all trans people, not just us. And so that's my vision, and it links to Keith's question, is creating real social change so that the only trans people that people might come across are not just the lucky few who end up on stage, who end up talking on panels like this, but everywhere, everywhere.
Completely. Thank you so much for that. Vicky, how about you? What is the big bright future for you?
I don't know. I'm a little bit off with the fairies sometimes, but my idea would be we'd fly like a big trans flag on a spaceship across the whole universe and just go all the way around and then do it like maybe 3 or 4 times just to make sure that, you know, everyone saw us.
Yes. Okay. If any NASA scientists are listening, let's make that partnership happen.
Yeah.
Teddy, how about you?
I have a vision for a near future where trans people are treated like the experts we are about ourselves, about our bodies, about our experiences, about our identities, about our genders, about our lives, that we are at the centre of gender affirming healthcare, that we are able to access a doctor, and in particular, and preferably a GP, in whatever setting that is, whether that be in the community, for people who are incarcerated, for people who are Medicare ineligible. People can access a GP, engage in gender affirming healthcare that uses the informed consent model, because for those trans people who seek it, gender affirming hormones is life-saving. Absolutely life-saving. And if we focus on a harm reduction that situates the expertise in the trans person, then we can move forward. One of the projects that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm just recognising time, is completely restructuring the way that corrections in this state treats, manages, works with, moves trans people who are incarcerated. And the work that we're doing is focused on trans liberation and about trans expertise and empowerment, wherever we are, whoever we are, in all spaces and in all stages, with a particular focus always on sister girls and brother boys. Elevated, the future, who we need to listen to, and who is next.
Absolutely. And to finish us off for this amazing panel, Emma, how about you? What is your big dream for the future of gender euphoria?
So the future of gender euphoria is a party. More trans run events, especially by First Nations people. The future of gender euphoria is more trans tenderness, spaces for trans people to share platonic intimacy, braid each other's hair, you know, softly stroke each other's cheeks. I think so often queer experiences are seen in quite a sexual way. And obviously that can be great for some people, but I just think so many trans people crave intimacy and physical affection, and we need to celebrate that in all forms and create space for it.
Absolutely. Yes, a big hug to end the panel. That's exactly the note that we should be going out on. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Thank you, Teddy and Emma, Estelle, Mama, Nix, and Victoria. You've been amazing this evening. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to have this conversation with. And thank you to our amazing audience at home. Thank you for your questions and your thoughts, and all of your amazing comments. This is going to be going out publicly on YouTube in about a week or so, once we get all the captions and everything sorted out. So keep an eye out for that then. And don't forget to tune in on the 12th of November at 6 p.m. for our final Trans Pride in a Pandemic forum. Always was, always will be Sister Girls and Brother Boys, which you can find out more out about at acon.org.au/TPP. You can sign up there, and that's totally free as well. But for now, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for giving us your time at the moment. And I hope everyone finds that moment of euphoria for themselves.
Thank you, Liz. Thank
Thanks,
you, everybody.
Liz.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Everyone's gone now. Hi,
Hey,
everybody.
everyone.
You're all amazing.
That was so lovely.
How's everyone feeling?
That was great.
Yeah, I had fun.
Good.
Estelle or Emma, would either, you've just heard about the next panel that's on?
Uh-huh.
We just confirmed it yesterday. I reckon we have space for one more sister girl, and I just wanted to put that out there.
I would love to see Emma on screen, on the screen, taking up space if she has the capacity to. So,
Sure. Yeah, I'm
just have a look at your diary. 6 to 7. Auntie Lisa, Uncle Dean, Hayden, Kate Wicked, who has a brother boy son, and Bree Curtis is going to MC and moderate.
Sounds amazing. Sorry, what was the date again?
The 12th, let me just find that little message. Yeah, 12th of November.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I think my internet just went funny.
Yeah, you cut out for a sec, I think.
How are you doing, Mama?
Good. I just hope I didn't talk too much.
Not at all.
Sometimes I can't talk as fast as I can think in person, so I wonder if it's clear or I have to backtrack and clarify midway through talking.
You were amazing.
That was so good.
I feel like I spoke too much, but you're all incredible. Wow.
Now, I can guarantee if anyone spoke too much, I would have gotten out the big red buzzer, cut you off. So you're all